So on my drive every day, back and forth, New Ulm, Mankato, New Ulm, I have time to, some windshield time to just think about how was my day and what are we going to do today? What good shall we do this day? Was Ben Franklin's morning question to himself in his diary. What good shall I do today? So I knew this was coming. I knew this episode was coming today, and I was thinking about the four people sitting around the table and realizing they all know one another from different contexts. And what are we going to talk about? There's always this question, is there a theme? Is there a topic? I've seen it work every time where I might have some kind of an idea, but really it's not that necessary. If we get the right people in the room, it emerges. But we do need a beginning prompt. We need a way for us to begin. And here's what I was thinking. This might be fun, and I've never done anything like this. What if everybody around the table, the four people around the table, talk about the other three people? And I was trying to think, well, how do we do that? What if it's just describe a place where you were together with that person? You start gathering that, you're looking around, you've got three other people to account for, places you've been with them. That will naturally, sort of result in a mini story, right? And by that time, we're rolling. We game for this?
Boy, let's do it.
We might have.
We'll see where it goes.
Is anybody ready to just go?
Well, I was with Silas Gawrisch across the table from me in a communication class that has been notoriously uncomfortable. And Silas got to experience the deliciously awkward moments that I have created in that class by calling them out. This class is not comfortable. It just is not comfortable. You guys have no idea what you're missing when it comes to what this class can usually be, and I feel bad about that. But I've been thinking a lot lately about the prayer I pray every morning that has a line that is, Lord, things will happen to me today, some I can control, most I cannot. And just thinking about the part of my classes that is really beyond my control, how things land and where the discussions go. And I was thinking that the point is not in the communication class that if we just communicate well, everything gets better. I don't really know how to fix that class right now. But that what I can bring is that God is always working. He's always working, always doing good, always. Where we can see it and we can't. And so Silas is one of the really comfortable people in the room. That's a joy because you're so curious. I don't have many students that want to talk after class with just beautiful questions that this man has. But so we're sharing that experience in a communication class that it's been really interesting.
It has. Yeah. You described those awkward, uncomfortable moments that you said you created them on purpose. Would you say?
I would say I saw that a student had mentioned a class that wasn't very comfortable, and I just, this is now the elephant in the room because I don't think this class is very comfortable. And it was like, how do you change the moment? That's what's been really interesting. I've been trying to talk to those students about, you're going to be in charge of a team, let's say, and it just isn't what it could be. You have a vision of what it could be. How do you change that? What do you do about that? That doesn't maybe make it worse in some ways. And so my strategy was just to name it and see what happens. I told my kids, I love you guys. I love you. I'm at a good place in life where I don't need your approval. So I'm going to do the best I can. Let's see if we can fix this, You were talking the other day, Jason, about not letting things become adversarial in a classroom. And I thought about that. Yeah, I'm not going to be the one to bring that, But yeah, what do you do about a group that isn't what it could be? You can have such a transformative thing when the group receives a person who's never been received by a group before. And there's those that bring, they feel alone in their wretchedness, and the group can bring universality. It can bring, you're not alone, and it can bring an installation of hope. But one person without the emotional intelligence to understand the effect they're having on that group, or the maturity to care, one person can keep us from going there. And of course, the world is full of inconvenient people, and I'm one of them. And so we have to love those people. Got to love them up. But what will that look like?
I'm going to be an inconvenient person. You've only done one. You have two more people to name the places.
Oh, am I still on the?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question though before we.
Another inconvenient person.
You identified the potential for a person or two who just don't have the vulnerability or the interpersonal skills to participate at that level. It can really bring a group down. I wonder if you ever identify the opposite type of person, if you almost influence or maybe not manipulate, but shape the culture of a classroom by talking intentionally to people like Silas and letting them know what role they play and letting them know that you see that. Or do you just let it be organic and allow that to happen?
That's a very fine idea. I haven't taken that specific step, but I do think about that when first time someone says something vulnerable, that there's a transaction that happens in that moment, that the group either says, yeah, we'll go there, or the group has a way of saying, nah, we're not going to go there, but the person that does that, they have changed the culture, and I think that's what leadership is. So I haven't gone the step of giving a nudge to a guy like Silas and say, hey, Silas, maybe you can be part of the solution.
Yeah. Do you see the role that you have?
Yeah. Interesting.
To that point a little bit, we talked about this a little bit after class one day, but we were talking about when we think about like group communication, or more specifically like group culture, I guess, oftentimes there's a like preloaded culture that was not established or created or even recognized by anyone in that room, which can make it really difficult to break out of, especially if there's negatives that come with that culture. In that specific application, I don't know what that is. I feel like after you brought it up, I thought about it a lot. I don't know what it is, but I feel like there's something hidden there that wasn't necessarily created there. And yet has a really big impact. And I haven't quite figured that out yet, but
I'm across the table from Aaron Wakeman, and I was at Shogun Hibachi Grill with him last night. That's a place we were together. Mm-hmm. And we had a long conversation with Ben Lunston, Aaron and I.
You warned the server that we might be 4 hours, and I think it was 3.5.
Yeah, she was a little shook. But yeah, we got really comfortable in several ways. I think, Mark, you just talked about vulnerable leadership, and we were talking about real things, and Aaron has some similar sort of concerns about just working with people, right? Personalities. And in a classroom, I've got this all the time, or colleagues. This is an interesting thing for us to consider. And just like that, we have several theses rolling.
Yeah, we do.
We don't have to think at all about. We don't have to preload this. Martin Scorsese. I think I've said this a few times on the podcast. Martin Scorsese says making a movie is 90% casting. Right. I'm very happy to be on cast with you.
Me too. So next to me is Jason Jaspersen. We had coffee at a favorite coffee shop in McNawam on Saturday with Luke Thompson, the great Luke Thompson as well. And I walked away, Jason, just thinking, I love the fact that we're getting more comfortable. You know, I'm an introvert, and there's a process you have to experience where you get to that level of, I'm comfortable with this person. And it's a process you have to just let unfold, and, you know. But I walked away saying, I like being comfortable with this man, you know. And this has just been such a pleasure.
Could you relay the origin story of our coffee? How do you remember that?
I remember an origin story in which I thought you did an amazing thing. I was presenting to a men's group on Christian apologetics, and after the presentation, my memory, Jason, is that you said to me, I want to know you. And that was a transparent thing to say, if I'm remembering that correctly, unless I dreamt that. And then we had a coffee or two, got to see your art studio, and then somehow we pulled Luke in.
He moved to town.
Yeah, he moved to town.
he's the one that keeps us scheduled.
He initiates it. Hey, it's time to have coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think before him, we might have gotten around to it about once a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, it's hard. It's hard to get time.
Is that the origin story?
Yeah, I think that jives.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how I remember it.
No one has ever said such a thing to me before, and I just...
You know, people tell me things like that, and I guess I'm just not afraid anymore. The clock's ticking, you know. Let's have a life. I was going to say I was up on scaffolding with this guy, Silas, this summer. And on my back porch and on my front porch, we were working on our house, and I hired Silas and Jack and Colton and Teddy on the premise that we could save money on do-it-yourself. Jenny and I were just looking at it. We didn't save that much money, but we gained. I think we gained that kind of mileage and traction in knowing one another that wouldn't come with just hiring somebody out.
I agree. Yeah, the conversations that we had, whether it was just you and me or as a group, I feel like we're, one, really healthy, and two, very needed for time, I think. Yeah, just with me at the time trying to decide which school to go to here in the fall. Indirectly, a lot of the conversations that we had, or you teaching me how to juggle,
yeah,
were transformative for me. So I appreciated that experience.
Well, I found out that Aaron and Silas know each other.
Silas, my first impressions of you are meaningful because when a person is meaningful to their children, they become meaningful to you. And we got to watch you on soccer fields and other things, and you quickly became a role model, someone that our kids looked up to, and we watched the way you handled yourself on a soccer field, the way that you handled and treated the teammates that were under you. And it was a strong first impression. There's something, a level of admiration and trust is built really quickly when it involves your children and people who are caring for them and loving them. So I just appreciated the way that you were a role model. The other thing that I'll mention, Silas, Mark shared a story that involved awkward and uncomfortable things. And I think the elephant in the room is, Silas, I cannot see you anymore without picturing this portrait that hangs at your parents' house. So Jack, your friend, painted what I think is a really nice portrait. That's not the awkward and uncomfortable part.
Yes.
The awkward and uncomfortable part is that your parents have chosen to hang it in the most prominent place in the house.
Yes.
Keep in mind, there's no portrait of Grant anywhere.
Correct.
Your brother. It's lit like the Mona Lisa. And it's a conversation starter because you can't not see it as you walk into the house. So I just have this portrait burned into my head as I think about Silas Gawrisch. So anyway, kudos to Jack if you're listening. It's a really well done thing.
My thought is like it's a work in progress. You know, they just need more paintings.
True.
Right now it's like, oh, he's the favorite one, right?
Yeah.
Our house is full of portraits of our children and family members. You know, you just need to normalize it. Need more.
I guess.
Buy more art.
Yes, that would be ideal because, well, you mentioned uncomfortability.
Yeah.
It's very uncomfortable for me to have a large painting very well lit in the middle of my living room. So, but it is, again, very good painting. Yeah, but.
I'm picturing you bringing a girl over to meet your parents. She's, what in the world? Anyway.
I would try to not draw attention to it, but I feel like it'd be pretty quickly noticed.
I think it just turns into a conversation about Jack and about your friendship and origin of that and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it always comes with a story every time it's brought up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
so in the background, your family is commissioning more artwork.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, Nora Kratz is, I think, has 2 done. I don't know exactly how many they commissioned, but I think 3 in my head sounds right. But yeah, very good. I don't want to spoil it for them, so I won't say anything about them. But
remind me which of Jason's paintings is hanging in that same living room.
there's a print of, it's like your point of view, like if you're looking at the painting, is Peter in the water, and Jesus is reaching a hand
from Peter's camera,
right? Reaching a hand down to you. My mom has had that painting.
It might be Peter. It's interesting that you say that.
Oh, I kind of assumed it was, but well, I mean, yeah, from scripture, I guess it would be, but obviously there's more.
It's not necessarily water.
Oh,
look at it closely.
I guess I haven't.
You could be on the ground.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I think we need to see it now. Jason, I knew of you before we met. And there were a series of conversations and meetings probably 2 years ago when we came here to Bethany and we were talking to students in the arts and media department about whether they might serve overseas with Friends Network. And I remember one conversation specifically in the Fine Arts Center in one of your classrooms, studios. And I remember every time we would share a vision for what the students may contribute to missions, or the way that the arts illuminate Christ and his kingdom and everything, I remember a slow process of just kind of coming to appreciate it's these you two moments, right? Not Bono, but like you also, right? Where there was I think an understanding that happened pretty quickly between the two of us that we were coming from a pretty similar place. I representing an organization, you an arts department. It might not look the same at first, but I think there was a shared understanding of what you and I were trying to cultivate together. And I think that's why the relationship developed as quickly as it did. There was a mutual trust and understanding that we had that we knew to build on quickly. So I just really came to appreciate conversations with you. And you ask you ask meaningful questions, which is another thing that just prompts dialogue and understanding and trust and admiration. So I don't know if that was the first impression of you, but certainly when the relationship started to blossom, I think. Mark and I have the privilege of attending a writer's retreat every summer, and we usually meet in a house on a lake or something. And one of my favorite pictures of Mark Paustian is when you are sitting alone, maybe overlooking a lake, looking out a window, reflecting. I think if someone drew a portrait of Mark Paustian, it may not even be of his face. It may be of, which is probably for everyone's good, right? No, I'm kidding. Wow. So, no. I think what it would be, Mark, is you in deep wonder, reflection, awe, appreciation. There are magical things happening as you sit for an hour or two, just reflecting and pondering. And it's just a picture that's really meaningful to me. So there are other people in our group that are just machines. They're putting down thousands of words. But I've come to appreciate your creative process, which involves a lot of reflection and wonder. It's the picture I have of Mark Paustian.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. So Aaron Wakeman to my left. We've been in a lot of places together, Thailand and Airbnbs and so on. But I will take you back to a classroom maybe 24, 23 years ago when I was just wondering what I'd done to my life when I left the parish as a pastor to be a teacher in college. And but the first, I might have the details wrong. How I think of it is that you were in the very first classroom I stepped into. It was a speech class, Aaron, and you did not need to be in a speech class. You clearly did not need to be there. Everybody else did, but not you. And I walked out of that class, if I'm right that this was my first class, and I said to myself two things. First, I felt kind of stupid about how I'd handled my first class. But at the same time, I said to myself, I'm going to love this. I'm going to love this. You just completely spoiled me. I think there were a lot of gifted people in that class, but you were shining, right? And just interesting and unexpected and completely engaging and so that's how far back we go.
Class was a lot of fun. There were many memorable personalities in that class. Yeah, good memory.
Mark, I really like that sentiment that you have that reaction to a student. I think so. I'll take this to parenting and then transfer it to education. I too wondered, like, what happened to my life. I'm in a classroom. How did that unfold? But as my kids were getting older, I had a stark realization that we easily assume that kids want their parents to be proud of them. That's a given. We just know that naturally. It dawned on me as my kids were maybe getting 10, 12 years old that I want them to be proud of me. And that maybe, like, this is the time when it fades away. When, hugs for daddy when you come home, or climbing or bedtime stories, end up in the rearview mirror. So, in the classroom too, I've realized, like, it's not just like the student goes to the professor and, has this sort of receiving relationship there. The teacher gets something from the students. The teacher is learning, and I think that surprises maybe some people. And that the teacher isn't necessarily the smartest person in the room. There's some brilliance that we encounter, that we see. We see that this needs refining, but whoa, there's horsepower there. Wow, and that is just grand to be a part of.
Yeah, I do have a lot of passion for that relationship and for how transformative college can be. And I think that's part of where my wrestling and reaction comes from, is when you see it not happening.
And you called it spoiled. You said you got spoiled.
Yeah, spoiled. And there's a certain amount of pride in that too, how I respond. I got to fight that. Kierkegaard says the victory of love is I'm going to fight for you. That is, I'm going to fight the part of me that is going to use you or dismiss you, and I'm going to fight for you. So I got to fight for these students in that kind of crazy way, which is, I don't want it to be prideful. I don't want it to be about me. I just miss it when it's not there, and so for a while, pity party, but then I get to the point pretty quickly where I'm going to take this on. I'm going to figure this out if I can.
I just realized I'm laughing, and it's because I think I just delight in authenticity. That just feels so very real for you to say.
I think I'm like you, maybe everybody around this table, that I just have found that transparency is the most liberating thing on the planet. The simple expression of the apostle, let us throw off falsehood and speak truthfully to each other. That the posturing is pretty silly, really.
I thought that was Bob Dylan all along the Watchtower. Let's not speak falsely now. Maybe it can be both.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So the writer's retreat is an interesting thing to think about. Partially because of that picture that Aaron painted of Mark, the reflection, the just sitting there of it, because that work is invisible. And I'm kind of fascinated by unseen work. We were talking last night at Shogun about Charles Schulz staring out the window, and that's the work that he has to do in order to create the Snoopy strip. He's thinking. Thinking is work. Contemplation is work, and I really like validating that. So, what if we kind of think about the unseen frontiers that we're working on right now? Do y'all have something in your life that maybe isn't evidenced visibly, but it's a frontier for you? It's something that you're working on behind the scenes, inside your head, inside your heart. I think it's related to becoming. Who are you becoming? What kind of ways are you transforming? What kind of ideas or concepts have been haunting you, have been on your mind? You've been iterating for yourself. I think Silas leads this one.
Come back to me, because I want to make sure I form it how I want to.
That is exactly how Silas operates. So I'll tell you why I say that, because this summer, I'll tap dance for a little bit while y'all think. This summer, Silas and I were talking about deliberation. I watched him deliberate whether he should continue at Bethany, transfer back to MLC. And boy, every time it was back and forth. And we had a whole podcast episode dedicated to deliberating where to go to college with Silas and Lauren. So here's Silas deliberating right now because he wants it to be right, and that's because he cares. He's responsible to the ears of our our listeners? Take your time.
I think I got it.
He's back.
Or at least a start, and then it'll hopefully form as I go. The other day, so I'm in a teaching religion class at Martin Luther College, and my lesson was about being a manager of the gifts that God has given you. Teaching it to, peers, classmates, but the lesson is intended for 7th and 8th graders. And I was describing attitude towards the gifts that you've been given, specifically their origin. And I was asked by one of my peers the difference between confidence and cockiness or pompousness, or essentially a selfish view of your gifts. And I thought about it for a second, and I thought about just saying that. But then something came to my mind, and I think the difference is contentment. When you are, because part of that question was, if you're, for an example, if you're good at soccer, you can be confident in that gift, but how do you make sure that that doesn't bleed into pompousness or cockiness? And I think the difference is contentment. If you are confident in your abilities and confident in the fact that you've been given these abilities by God, you know that. You don't need other people to know that. You're content with the fact that you have that ability and that you use it to the best of your ability to glorify God. Cockiness is a lack of contentment in the sense that you want other people to know that, and you're not okay if other people don't know that you have that. Yeah. The focus has shifted from your relationship with God to your relationship with others, which then removes the origin. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes. And so I like the idea of attention. So that last bit where, you shifted the relationship between you and God to the relationship between you and the world. That's a matter of attention. What do you think is important in this life, in your daily life? It's just focus, that's idolatry, attention. And that's exactly the answer. That's the prompt. That's a great frontier to be considering. We've talked about that on this podcast a few times because I deal with a lot of really talented people here. And as a Christian, we got to think that through and try to develop a stance, an appropriate stance, so that you can serve well, so that you can achieve excellence for the sake of the kingdom.
And I think that's back to that attention idea that you were describing. When you pay attention to the betterment of the kingdom, the natural result is excellence, or at least the pursuit of excellence. But when the attention is on not the kingdom, yourself, others, even this is where the formation falls off of the thought. But even paying attention to too much to the actual things that you're doing to be excellent, rather than the reason for doing the things to be excellent, the excellence falls off and disappears because
that motive needs to be appropriate.
Right. And ultimately, if the motive isn't correct, that selfishness, not contentment, bleeds in. and can be actually really destructive.
Contentment is to me, a surprising answer, a surprising take. In that, I don't think I would have led with that, but after you explain it, I get it. Okay, so that's an unseen frontier. What a great thing to be working on.
Who's next?
Okay.
For the listener, the awkward and uncomfortable eye contact happening around this table is funny.
It's delightful, actually.
Go for
I
it,
secretly love awkward people. They make me comfortable. I don't know what that is. So I think you might have heard the tail end of this at coffee on Saturday, but a strange thing is happening for me, which is that all my career I've had anxiety dreams of, I got to preach, I forgot to prepare, and the time's getting closer and can't get the gown on, and you wake up in a total panic. And you're just glad to be awake, glad it's over. For about the last month, I've had those anxiety dreams where I get ready in plenty of time for the presentation or sermon, and it goes smashingly well. I've never heard of
Does this still categorize as anxiety?
I mean, they start that way. I've never heard of anybody having that dream. It's so like, what's going on? So I'm in a network of mostly pastors, but Aaron is in this as well, and it's been completely transformative. A new devotional practice for about a year and a half, and that's what I think it is. And there's no brag in it. I'm a weak person, and I need this, but I just will never start my day without. You light a candle and put on some songs, listen 4 or 5 songs, and then reflect on the King of the universe is my brother, and the King of the universe is my friend, and reflect on I'm reconciled to God, I'm a child of the Most High God, reconciled body and soul, and my death is a sleep from which I will wake to Him. And just preparing myself for my own death as I hardwire that thought that I am among those who long for His appearing. I haven't seen Him, but I love Him. And so then, you start, and it's just not about the day. It's just to be in the presence of Him and be grateful to be in His presence, and just to enjoy. Just to enjoy Him. And then comes, a kind of Bible study I do, and often just journaling on a verse and so on. And it's 45 minutes, it's an hour. And if I have to get up, this is no brag, I promise. If I have to get up at 4, not long ago, 3:30, just because this is how I just have to. And so I apologize if it feels like a brag. It's just completely moving the furniture around in my head. And the dream is just a strange little outcropping.
I apologize that you feel like you have to apologize.
Okay. I'll stop.
No. I hope you can hear what I'm saying. Because to me it makes perfect sense. What I hear is worry a little bit, or responsibility, more like you want to do right by your responsibility, right? So you don't feel prepared, and you get up at 3:30, you get up at 4, whatever, right? In order to feel like you've done your due diligence.
Well, so, it's getting up at whatever time, because what I say to my students is, when I talk about this, it's I owe it to you to come to you with a full heart. I owe that to you, to come with a full heart. And it took me a long time to figure this out. I hope you all can figure out sooner and earlier in life than I say to my students, but I've learned how to do that. And it's often a meditation on my best idol buster. I think it's for me to live as Christ. For me to live as Christ. And to die as gain. That just clears things out of my brain. To know Him, to belong to Him. This is my life, and meditate often on how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and that the prayer to know what's beyond knowing. We can't know this, but in the Spirit, we pray to know it, and it's Lord, in the Spirit, make this more real to me than my regrets, because they're all sunk down in the ocean of God's forgetfulness, and make this more real to me than the threats and promises of my idols, who thinks what of me. For me to live as Christ, and make this more real to me than the imagined sorrows that my brain can conjure up. More real.
There are hazards to imagination.
Yeah.
And now you're touching on what Silas was talking about, the attention, the idol of what other people think of you.
Absolutely.
You sharing spiritual disciplines and the profound impact that it has on you is really meaningful for people. They desire to experience, I'll speak for myself, the fruits of the Spirit. This life that you have cultivated and the relationship that you have cultivated with your Lord is this peace of God which transcends all understanding, that now guards your heart and mind. So it seems like the anxious dream that has shifted is that peace of God guarding your heart and mind. And I often wish that there were a platform or a forum for people to be able to share in humility their spiritual disciplines and these beautiful things, the invisible work that makes them who they are. Because we don't get to see it very often. These are humble people. Sometimes you find out, I heard a story of a man who did not miss a day in his 50 years of marriage of reading scripture with his wife before he went to bed. Didn't miss a day. And he's not announcing these things. He's not talking about them, but we are so blessed by learning about these spiritual role models and the understanding the invisible disciplines that are producing the fruit that we see, that we envy. So I'm glad you shared.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's my apology for the apology.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I sense something in our culture, say our fellowship, that has a little bit of a blind spot for this, where we have knee-jerk sort of reactions that are something like Gesundheit, like we just automatically take a stance.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, something's lost.
Mm. Something's
lost where we could benefit from hearing about what you do,
mm-hmm.
how you are, and it isn't a brag. It doesn't have to be a brag, and it doesn't have to be automatically categorized or labeled as such. So it's great to hear Silas considering such a thing, right? Is there a navigable, narrow Lutheran middle to figure out? You stay out of one ditch or the other, boasting too much, or maybe just hiding too much. Others, you can be a blessing to others with your life experience. I'm glad you pointed that out, Aaron.
Yeah.
In class, Professor Paustian, today actually, you talked about God wearing us like a mask. I think that's pretty applicable here. Especially and you also said just now, make it more real to me than this or that, and I think that idea of making it more real and God wearing us like a mask, and then sharing, Mr. Wakeman, like you were saying, having an outlet to share, what makes us who we are, and I think the connection between God wearing us like a mask and us sharing that is a beautiful form of expression, a beautiful avenue of sharing, and in that making it not only more real for you because you're doing that, but also making it more real for others. That mode of expression, when you say make it more real, to me, it makes it more real for others too. Because God, puts you on with that mask, speaks through you, shares through you, and there's the expression and the beauty.
Thank you. And so part of the beauty for me is, and I may have said this in class, was how you think about divine providence, how you think about God's care. That for most of my life, it was the brown field turns green, every spring. God does that, which it still is, of course. But when you think in terms of, I like to say, if my wife, Connie, my bride, still hugs me, and my kids still put their arms around my neck and love, well, this is God seeing to it that I am loved. This is God himself seeing to it that I am loved. And it brings his care so close, it just takes your breath away in terms of the people that show up, like the men around this table, people that just show up. This is God seeing that I have everything. And beautiful. Beautiful is the right word for that. And it's buried deep in Martin Luther, in the doctrine of vocation. It's all there, hidden in plain sight, some think.
And that idea of providence, let's go back to Silas's idea of gifts, discovering what God has given you. You recognize that comes from him, it comes from outside of you. And you can see it everywhere. I'm just making a connection here. You're saying the same thing. And this episode also is evidence of providence. Every episode, right? In studio art, we talk about manna. It's just God gives you just enough right when you need it. Can't hoard it. Goes bad. Because you need to be reminded that there's more coming. It's okay. It's always okay. That providence is unfailing.
Love that. Love that.
So, Aaron, earlier you asked me for the name of Ian McGilchrist, somebody we talked about briefly last night. I've been listening to him try to put his massive books into a nutshell, and he just struggles with his great Scottish accent. He struggles, but I caught something from him. He's a blend of philosopher, neuroscientist, psychologist. I don't know, but he's really doing a lot of work with left brain, right brain, sort of revitalizing that conversation after it sort of got shot down as a too simplified pop culture mainstream kind of thing. He brings it back and says, actually, maybe it isn't exactly a localized left-right kind of thing, though there are important differences. But he insists that there are different ways of approaching reality, operational modes. And he was able to boil this down into little acronyms. One is ROT, rot. And the other kind of sounds like mumble, MUBM. They go like this. One operational method for reality is the reality out there. Reality is out there. And your relationship is, your attention, again, is with something outside of yourself. And the other acronym, MUBM, made up by me. Reality is made up by me. So he was trying to make that palatable and made some metaphors. For example, if you're driving, it's possible to imagine a circumstance where your GPS is telling you have arrived, and your windshield is telling you something else. There's nothing here. So these two operational modes. One will insist on the map but the map says this. And now, insert all kinds of substitutes for map. Right? There's a system, there's a curriculum, there's software, all kinds of devices, all kinds of templates. Or for yourself, sort of imagined ways that it should be, a self-told story made up by me. The reality is this fantasy or this substitute. The map is a substitute. But the reality out there has a sunset. The map doesn't record the moment. The map doesn't account for the ineffable complexity, the infinite reality of just being in a moment. The reality out there. So I bring it up to tie in Ian McGilchrist. I just keep trying to understand what he's getting at, and also to get back to Mark. I picture you in the wee hours of the morning struggling with coming to people with a full heart, feeling responsible to the imagined ways that you'll fall short, right? Part of that's made up by you, right? There's a fantasy in there that like it's going wrong, it's going to go wrong, but that's not the reality out there. You don't know what the reality is yet. It's coming, but we can do this. I said the hazards of imagination, and I've had this too, where I have fake arguments, or I try to predict like who will object, say to my military monument. I had all kinds of scenarios going in my head that was made up by me. Just injecting this information. See what happens. Awkward looks around the table.
It feels unfair, Jason, that you would spend 3.5 hours talking to a guy who's going through whatever version of midlife evaluation and reflection, and then ask a deep question and sit around a table unprepared.
You're talking about our conversation last night?
You love these scenarios.
I do, yeah.
Which is funny.
I'm in flow state right now.
What's funny is I do too, but I'm usually in control of it. I'm usually creating the chaos.
I know where you're going, and I've had this same situation.
Yeah.
When people ask me questions, I'm lost.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah. I really enjoy uncomfortable situations, but it's interesting to think, is there a pattern that the uncomfortable situations I'm enjoying are the ones that I have orchestrated, not that I find myself in?
Made up by me.
Yeah. You asked about invisible work, invisible reflection. I mentioned the midlife thing. I don't know what to make of a term, midlife crisis. I don't feel a crisis, but I think there's a phase of your life where you're evaluating big questions, meaning and purpose, that I personally wasn't pausing to evaluate as I was doing what I perceived to be the building of a life and a career and whatever. You don't necessarily pause to reflect. The reflection is an interesting one in this phase of life, and I find that I'm wanting to shrink my world. I have Clifton Strengths would say that my top strength is woo, which does not equal extrovert, but it does mean that I have an ability to know, at least somewhat know, 5,000 people. And if I'm at a conference or in a big room, the challenge for me is to win them all, speaking to them or 30 seconds at a time. I'm drawing less and less energy from those things. In fact, I'll step in. Jason, I was at the booth yesterday at Old Main outside of your cafeteria, and I find myself having to take a big deep breath and pray for the energy to do it again, because I just keep having to do this, to know 1,000 people and to bring all of the energy all of the time. But what I'm finding is that the moments that are the most meaningful for me are much smaller. So I think about the 2 weeks that we spend in missionary training as the highlight of my year, every year, because we have 8 or 10 or 12 people sitting in a room, and it's slow and deliberate for 2 weeks. Catches people off guard because they come in thinking, I'm going to take in content, I'm going to take in information, and when we're done with the 2 weeks, I will know everything I need to know about being a missionary. And I don't do that. It's much slower and much more deliberate, and there's space for this infinity loop of conversation and learning to just kind of sit in things. It's very rewarding for me. So this invisible work that's happening in my brain is, what does it look like in this phase? I don't mean that it would be a job change or a career change or anything like that. I think it can happen within your context. But what does it look like to lean into the thing that's smaller and richer? We talked yesterday about the dream that I've had for a while, that our organization would have some sort of a retreat center, maybe a furlough house or something. When I picture a retreat center, I don't at all picture a place that can hold 400 people. I don't want that. I picture a house that can hold about 30 max, and we're in socks in a living room, and the shelves are full of books, and I get to pull off every moment holy and say, I want to read something. And there's something richer about being small. And it's kind of jarring for me, because my method of operation for a couple of decades has been bigger, right? It's my world. I am pretty comfortable in bigger. And it's really liberating to stop caring about that. I just spoke at a conference on a personal evangelism and testimony, and I was reflecting after, in a liberating way. I don't think in an arrogant way. I didn't want feedback forms. I didn't want to reflect on being, whether or not I was appreciated, loved, known, valued. It was very liberating to just say, here it is. And it's probably true that some of you walked into the room with different expectations and I failed to meet them. But it's just okay. There's something really liberating about saying, that's okay. I'm older now. There's a place where you can rest that says, I can offer something smaller and more meaningful. These are my best days. This is not always, because there's still this search. Is it Weight of Glory? It's Weight of Glory where he talks about the circles, and he says there's always another inner circle, that you have the approval of this one, but then there's another group of people and you desperately want their approval, and then when you get there, it's not satisfying, and you desperately want to get the next circle of approval, and when you get there, sure enough, I'm not fully satisfied. And so there's something lifted when you say, it's all right, it's not about reputation or being known. There's something beautiful about the smaller things. I don't have a lot of time to do this anymore, but one of my favorite things to do is walk around a place like Hmong Market or Somali Market in town. I live up in the Twin Cities, and just spend slow time talking to people. Just slow time with no agenda. And that I'm finding much more enjoyable than the constant effort to win others over. I don't mean win a competition so much as I mean just continue to justify value, self, role, organization. That's exhausting. So that's the deep work right now. Like I said, I don't at all think that requires a major shift. I don't think this is a midlife crisis where I abandon it all. But I think there's a new way to move through this reality. That's a lot more liberating, a lot more meaningful.
My sister's a counselor, Amanda Gertz, with Footnotes Counseling. She lent me a book, probably seeing the midlife storms,
Mm-hmm.
and the book addresses the two purposes of the two halves of life. Silas is right in the heart of that first half,
Mm-hmm.
where it is your job to build, to get bigger, to figure out what you can do, and prove it. But then there's almost always a crisis of some sort that forces somebody out of that stance, so that you can do exactly what you're describing with the other half of life, and that is to just enjoy. Mark said earlier, just enjoy the slow time, to appreciate. The metaphor in that book is a dance party. And in the first half of life, like you gotta learn your moves, and you gotta get in the middle of that dance circle and show them what you got. Mm-hmm. And that's appropriate. That is appropriate for that time. That's discovering what God has given you. It's developing your gifts, investing in them, making them great, becoming excellent. Mm-hmm. But later on, the job becomes helping other people do that and being the crowd.
Yeah.
Being there to appreciate somebody else and just be in awe, like, whoa, look what they can do.
In the same way that, Mark, you've talked about an honor that you receive from watching your kids do what God created them to do, and you receive honor through that. In the same way, I'm having a lot of those moments recently as I read missionary newsletters or visit them in their fields, and you see them living out what God has called them to do, and whatever role I played, which is a small part of the whole picture, but whatever role I played in equipping them to do that, there's a whole new level of joy and satisfaction in reading that newsletter that I would rather have, right? Much rather have than to have the ability to write it for myself. So fun to watch. Jason, you said something else. I appreciate that you're talking about the two phases of life. I think it's really important, and I think you're doing this, to redeem that first phase and say, it isn't as if it was less than, and now you reach middle age, and now I know meaning and purpose. Because I think God gives you an energy and an enthusiasm and a drive to build, to use those gifts to His glory. It's something that I don't regret. I think there's a unique gifting that He gives each one of us to fully pursue with a lot of zeal the things that give us energy and motivation. And for me, a lot of that had to do with building, pick it, family, organization, culture. I think it's important to say, let's redeem that, and not say that it's somehow less than. You're not saying that, but I'm saying that maybe to Silas, who's thinking, well, gosh, I just have to wait 20 years for meaning and purpose to enter my life. Not at all. There's a real purpose for a person in that phase, regardless of what's to come.
I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
45. I'm 45.
You've been corrected.
I'm noticing a shift from getting to giving. I think initially you are, well, I'll go with what you said. You mentioned winning 1,000 people. Mm-hmm. When you win, you get something. And kind of like you're describing, getting and giving in this context, neither one is better or worse. Or, and then in terms of building, when you build something, you get to like behold it, like what you've created. And I think that's the shift now. Now it's shifting to giving. We talk on the podcast or outside a lot about paying attention, spending time. Paying and spending are giving.
Paying or pain?
Paying attention.
ING.
Yeah, paying. Paying and spending, time and attention. You use the word slow a lot, which oftentimes has a negative connotation, but in this case produces wonder, I guess. And now it seems as though in what you're describing, you're experiencing that shift from getting to giving. You're spending that time in wonder. You're paying attention to, less results and more the process. Yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's great thoughts.
In real time, there are a few things I want to note. Last night in the parking lot, I mentioned that Ben Lunston was showing a movie called Perfect Days today in class, and I visited class for part of it, and I told just one of the greatest movies.
This is the Japanese toilet cleaner.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is slow. And it is slow in a way that's so engaging. It's amazing how the protagonist says almost nothing, and you just can't stop watching. And it's vocation, right? You're just watching vocation. And he has all these interactions. He's got people in his life who don't say much, but it's just, so that comes to mind when, we're highlighting that slow might have a connotation. And another thing comes to mind, which I hope will come back to my mind in real time as I tap dance right now. It probably will. It will. But maybe not right now.
I'll do your tap dance for a little while. We've talked before about some of these gifts from God being treated like commodities. The way that Americans talk about time, the verbs that we use around time are different than the verbs that another culture with a different orientation to time might. So we say spend time, waste time, give time, etc. Could probably name 10 if I wasn't thinking on the spot. But we treat it as our asset with which we make choices, rather than it being something that's outside of our control that we steward. And it just made me think that as Silas was talking about paying attention. What was your second example?
Spending time.
Spending, yeah. That there's an expense.
That implies scarcity.
Yeah.
Like you'll run out.
Yeah.
There's a finite amount.
Yeah. Yes. One of the things that people are concerned about in our missionary training is that somehow we won't cover everything that needs to be covered. And I just think it's fascinating to think about Jesus and his disciples. Way more unanswered questions than questions answered, right? So you just think about what Jesus was doing in those discipleship moments. Creating curiosity, letting them wrestle, letting them sit in uncertainty, building trust and dependence on God, not allowing them to rely on themselves. Something really rewarding about treating time that way. Saying, you think you know what you want to accomplish in this 1 hour meeting. But what if we reframe that and we do these things instead? And it'll be uncomfortable for the person who's wired to achieve and check things off, but it'll also be in some ways better. That's not to say that you don't need to accomplish real things in meetings, but to treat time that way, to say it's okay that we're spending the time this way, because the rest of the things will be done in due time.
So that stance is incredibly familiar to me. And the thing I want to say there is that there's a trade that happens with that stance. And as I understand it, the trade is between assurance and possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a strict agenda, and we're going to do these things, and we're going to stick to it, that provides assurances. You know what you're going to get. It's like the military saying, like, tell them what you're going to say it, tell them what you said. You know, like there's assurances, and you know. But what you miss there is what could be. And when, for example, this episode, this conversation, when you go in without a strict agenda, nobody knows what's going to happen, and possibilities emerge. It emerges. You don't have the assurances that the scary thing is that it could be bad, right? In any of those situations, you don't have the assurance that it won't be bad. But I guess I'm not afraid anymore. You know, like the possibility just is too tantalizing. Good things are going to happen.
You must have that tension in a classroom, Mark. You need to accomplish things. You have a curriculum. You have an hour. Are you wanting there to be a slower, more deliberate process that sometimes just isn't possible?
Yeah, in my mind, I'm going back to the prayer I mentioned. Lord, things will happen to me today. Most I can control, most I cannot. And I think I'm learning to embrace the most I cannot, because nothing will happen to me that you don't already know about. Lord, you're sovereign, you know. I think I'm less prone to kill a good conversation because we should get to something that's on the agenda. I've revamped all my communication courses here. We're just making up one day at a time. That's what we're doing right now. And I haven't even stopped to think, what's going to happen to my agenda? Did I time it out right? Will I get to everything? And so it goes to the liberating time of life this is, in a way, you know. I just have more and more, it circles back to something you triggered earlier. More and more, it's just loving seeing young people shine, just loving that thing when they shine. And they may not even realize that I created that space for that, and that I set this up and made that happen with my own vulnerability or whatever I did. And it goes back to why I grieve when it's not happening in a class, because it usually does. But I think it's learning to not just some I control, most I cannot, or poor me, but this is kind of wonderful to think about all the elements of this conversation we're having that we didn't control this. Nobody did. But I'm loving it.
You know, Mark, when you told the origin story and I came up to you and said, I want to know you. I don't remember exactly those words, but I remember standing there. And I remember now in the course of this conversation that something you said in your presentation was about being unhurried. That was a tenet or a principle. And I was a teacher at MVL at the time. And, you know, I'm hearing slow, right? I'm hearing allowing conversation. And this is also how I operate. And I also feel like I'm old enough, like we heard earlier, like this is what you're going to get. You know, like I actually don't care about the feedback. Like, you invited me, this is what you get.
Yeah.
And what you get is I make it up every day. I actually do make it up every day. Just like I described the windshield time, you know, and I'm not ashamed to say that, because I think this again is a transaction. Like, you're going to lose something and you're going to gain something. And what I gain in that stance of making it up every day on the spot is responsiveness. What we're going to do today has everything to do with where we are right now. Who's in the room? What happened last time? Reading the room, how does it feel today? Right? Because my top priority is engagement. It's not content. I need to make sure that I have you, that you're with us, you in the room, you students. And so if I don't have that, like, nobody's doing anything. The commodity is being wasted that time. So unhurried, echoed. You know, I was a teacher. I'll tell you another thing that echoed, that you said to me one day. I don't know if I've ever said this to you. Maybe I have. You came out and preached at MVL for chapel. And you have a way of convincing somebody. I talked to you afterwards. You have a way of convincing me that you actually want to know how I'm doing. And so I tell you. And what I told you was, I have more to do than I've ever had to do, and I can do it all. I can do more than I used to be able to do. So there was this sort of duality, like this growing load, but also this growing capacity. And I didn't quite have the words for it, and you just instantly gave me words. You said, "You're growing shoulders." And that just rung in my head. So I think, you know, I've built part of how I operate based on some of those things that maybe you didn't even know you were broadcasting. Unhurried and capacity, you know, is an issue.
I also love the word unscripted. It's another way to say it. Unscripted. That's the best.
Yeah. Everybody knows. Everybody knows if you're reciting or if you're really here. We just sense it. And then the posture, the stance regarding the moment shifts. I think this is why we have live sports, because nobody knows how it turns out. It's unscripted. Sorry, professional wrestling. What are you working on? What are you making? These are people who make things in different ways, right? And it might be visible, it might be invisible. It might be a life. It might be an object or a product. I'm interested in the things that Christians produce. This is somewhat of a blind spot, I think, in our fellowship. So I'll go first. I'm finally in striking range of a sculpture that goes out to Seattle, Washington, that represents Jesus and his bride, the church, as a deep water rescue. It's a picture of the doctrine of justification. It's a picture of Revelation. It's a picture of all of world history. It's Song of Solomon. And I'm very satisfied with the multiplicity, the way that it unfolds in meaning. That's been years. That phone call happened before COVID for that project with my friend Kent Reeder out in Seattle. And I'm making that, and I'm also, my mind is on a crucifix. I'm working on a crucifix for WLC, potentially. And that's a big checkpoint for a sculptor. You want to do one of those. So what are you making? Because I know y'all are.
It's been interesting to think of the creative process in my life, because I wouldn't have told you. The uninformed answer would have been, I don't really identify as a creator in that sense, or a creative person in general. I think we're all contributing. We're all creating. We do it in different ways. One of the ways that I would have said I don't see myself as a creative is that I wouldn't have seen myself as an author. I don't really desire to write a book. I don't. It's work. It's work. There's nothing glamorous about this. I know we're talking about overlooking a lake, but the other part of that retreat as you're overlooking a lake is that you're staring at a 12-inch screen for hours, you know. But I'm working on a book. What people will often say that sometimes the project finds you. You don't find the project, but the project finds you. And I've had the privilege of leading this organization that has produced stories, and that we can glean wisdom from and instruction from. And I was finding that I had the strong word would be obligation. Easier word is an opportunity to collect and represent this for the sake of the church, to offer it as a gift to people who would not otherwise engage with this organization. So it's a retelling of our evangelism model that we teach to our missionaries, and hopefully an encouraging model for people that they can take and apply in their own lives in a way that's freeing and liberating, not with the stigma of evangelism that they usually feel. So the creative process for me wasn't, I feel a need to sit down and create for the sake of creation, but I see it as an offering. That's motivating for me. Far more motivating than any sort of need to get my name on a book. I haven't had that. But the opportunity to contribute something that I'm just really privileged to sit in a seat where these things have come through me, and now I get to pass them along. That's a really beautiful thing. So that's the motivation. I don't know if I'll write after this book. I don't know. I don't know if I'll call myself a writer. You see that a lot. Published authors will say, I'm not a writer. And the non-writer will say, what are you talking about? You're a published author. But I know what they mean. They don't identify as a writer in terms of their identity, but they also see an opportunity to contribute from their life experience. So
that happens with painters quite a bit too. They just, there's some implied threshold that they don't achieve, or the priority for the identity isn't held highly, and it's really hard to navigate. You know, it's probably not important.
No, I was just going to say, who cares?
Yeah.
What
is important is I think an appropriate stance. Stance of service, the conduit that you described.
Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't happen. You're asking about writers' retreats and groups. It wouldn't happen without this writers' group. Asking on a monthly basis, how's it going? How can we encourage you? What are you working on? Just wouldn't happen in isolation. So community brought it to life.
It began with a study of the Inklings, C.S. Lewis's writing group, and that Tolkien's Lord of the Rings would not exist except for that group.
Yeah.
And so I have a book as well that will not exist. I think it will exist, but not apart from the group. It's a book about a very complex subject, but it's called indirect communication, which basically you could just say anytime we're not speaking in the most obvious way we could, it really is indirect. But there's many strategies. It's the communication we receive as an overhearing. How does that work? Like this podcast is an overhearing. People are just going to, eavesdrop on us and there's something very powerful about that and fascinating. And stories that we don't explain, let the story be the story, images we linger in. The fascination began with a study of the Old Testament. Like, why do it this way? We could have a theological treatise and it could be way shorter. So why not just tell us God's faithful and be done with it,
Mm-hmm. Why the tabernacle?
Why that?
Yeah.
There's nothing obvious about a burning bush. There just is not anything obvious about that. And so I've been presenting this around to pastors' conferences more lately as a way to kind of hone a message. And so there's a part that will explore this idea in the New Testament this time. And then we'll look at the church's communicative tasks, like preaching, apologetics, counseling, interpersonal. And how could this way of thinking about communication inform all those other tasks? And so I've got about 20 pages that I really like a lot. So,
is that 20 out of a larger total?
I tend to write long. I'm very verbose. Aaron is helping me to think that books don't have to be that long.
So that's 20 that you like out of 100 you don't?
I don't know exactly. I'm guessing a couple hundred pages.
I don't need the number.
Yeah. So,
what I want to know is what's it like to write that book? What's it like for you, Mark, to... Well, let's get a little context, too. Like, why does the book want to exist? Is somebody asking, or is it your initiative?
I think that the book wants to exist because there are certain things that I get to talk to people about, and it touches a nerve. So intercommunication has these purposes. Like, for example, I want to stir up your inwardness and create in you a need to know.
But you're writing this of your own volition.
Yeah, so part of the fun of it is writing. It's like being off the script, because our publishing house has been very good to me. There'd be no complaints about that whatsoever. They will not want to touch this, I don't think. And so there's something kind of, for me personally, kind of refreshing about that, kind of freeing about that.
Wait, clarify. They won't want to touch this.
I don't think it's the kind of book that they would.
They're not going to pick it up and sell it, or they're not going to mess with it in the edits.
I did throw my dissertation by an editor, and it came back unrecognizable, and so I just
marked up.
These are not, I present to pastors, and I will always say, you should vet me. I went off and did the PhD stuff. You ought to vet me, because I'm going to speak unguardedly, and you can just tell me, push back. It'll be fun. And
you invited me. This is what you're going to get.
Yeah, this is what you're going to get. And so that's gone well. It's been well received, but I still think it's a way of thinking about the scripture, for example, that this isn't a way we've thought about it before. And there's something uncomfortable about that. But the notion...
Restate that thesis. Restate what the book is about.
It is about communication that...
indirect.
Yeah, it's for example, it's not giving you more information. It's supplying what is lacking, which is the capability.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's communicating. No new information.
It draws in.
It's capability.
You got to say more about that, because I don't understand that yet. Capability.
Okay. The best way to understand indirect communication would probably be the prophet Nathan before King David. And so Nathan is not bringing to David anything David doesn't know. He knows he's an adulterer. He knows he's a murderer. There's no new information in the parable that Nathan tells to David. But what's lacking in David is, for one thing, the emotion, the proper emotion of rage to the person who would do such a thing. So David is led, the story keeps his barriers down, and David is now led to feel proper rage. The man who did this, stealing the neighbor's sheep, he should die. And then Nathan says, you are the man. And now the rage has met its proper object. And it's really unavoidable. And so in that case, it would be the capability of repentance. There's the capability of perseverance and a capability of drawing on the well that is Christ. So communication that's meant to...
Okay, so is this like a coach knowing that you've got more in you? Like in the weight room, like I know you got more?
It's a lot of things, and it's complicated. I'm
just advocating
rather
for
than supplying information that you already have. You already have Christian information. I know that you do. Rather than supplying that over and over and over, wouldn't it be wonderful to take the smallest part of what you know and take it up into an actual life? To translate that smallest part of what you know, that God is your Father, and translate that into existence. So what kind of communication promotes that? And my answer was, I think that's what all the beautiful, diverse, wild forms, the parable and the apocalyptic and the, and the historical narrative and the poetry, that's what all that is designed to do, is create a deep involvement with things we already know but are maybe relating ourselves to falsely. It is a complicated idea. So my writing task will be, okay, how do I make this accessible? And
I'm not actually confused.
Okay, you're forcing me to articulate. Yeah.
Well, I think it's unfamiliar,
Mm-hmm.
and I really love that you're working on it. To me, it's related to beauty. It's related to what art does.
It is. So
all of it suggests.
Beauty is an aspect of what the scriptures communicate. So you could just tell us God is faithful. But that is a beautiful thing. It needs to be cast as beautiful, like in the book of Ruth, because that's an aspect of what it's trying to convey. And the capability would be the appreciation of that. It's not information,
Mark, I'm so excited for that project. I've told you that before. I don't know what you'd make of the term legacy project or something. I don't know if it can be quite so narrow, but it feels to me like a legacy project that you say. You've said before the things that are urgent demand your attention. I've been invited to speak at this conference. I need to prepare for that. I have chapel sermons coming up. I need to prepare for that. And so it's easy for this project that no one is directly asking for. Easy for that to take a back seat. But I'm just excited for it to come to life. I think there's just an offering. It's just Mark Paustian offered to the church. I'm so excited for that.
That's so encouraging.
So you didn't get to the second part of my question.
Which was?
What's it like to make that book for you?
What's it like?
Aaron went a little bit into what it's like, he's staring at a screen all day long. Like it's work.
It's pretty agonizing, but I would never compare it to childbirth. Like, I don't know what that is, but the fact that it's agonizing, and when you get something this complex down on the page, and you like how you express that, and that's what I was trying to say. That's exactly what I was trying to say. That is profoundly satisfying. Deeply, deeply satisfying.
But hard fought.
Yeah,
hard,
very
hard to
much.
get to that communication.
Yeah.
St. George battling a dragon.
Yeah.
Right?
Indeed.
We're all the damsel. You need to save us.
Mm-hmm.
That probably goes wrong. Sorry. You're not the savior. but we like you quite a bit. and we admire your courage in the face of this difficulty. I think that should be said. It should be known that the struggle to get it right is the struggle that all artists, all people who make things go through. We have a saying that we've adopted in studio art here, that vision exceeds execution. You start out and you think this is going to be so good, and then it just always disappoints you. Fallen world, fallen people, you know. It's never quite what you thought it was going to be, because there's just friction. It's just so hard to make a good thing. So I appreciate your struggle. It's hard work, and it takes courage to confront it. But Silas,
I don't think mine's going to be quite as profound as that. That's pretty amazing. But I would say I'm working on two things that are similar. One, I'm working on culture. We talked a little bit about that kind of the thing that's built in, what's there but nobody made. And the, I guess, more actionable thing that comes out of that is working on relationships. Dr. Com here at Bethany, when I was deciding which school to go to, I had a conversation with her, and she said, I don't know if I'll really ever forget this. She said, no matter where you go, make sure that you invest in relationships. And that idea of investment specifically is intriguing to me. I think at the time, I don't know if I quite understood. Honestly, I don't think I still do fully, just because it takes time. I mean, that's the whole idea of investment, and I haven't had that time yet. But how that ties into culture is the biggest way that I feel I can impact a culture, specifically a hidden one that isn't automatically recognized by everyone, is by talking to people, having conversations, discussing it, making it known. And the only way to really do that is through relationships. I think of, my roommates, the people that I spend, 80% of my time with. We're always talking, always having conversations. I'm blessed to be able to be surrounded by people who are open and willing to discuss the invisible. And not just my roommates, but everywhere. This podcast is a phenomenal example. I love this. This is in the best way possible, this is what I'm working on. Building these relationships and working on that invisible thing that I still can't quite describe. It's amazing. And I guess back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, I'm getting right now. I'm absorbing through these relationships so much wisdom, and being able to kind of store that and have purpose for it and be able to act on that wisdom, and share it with others. And you described kind of being a conduit, like having all this information and then being able to share it yourself with others, is phenomenal. And I imagine I'm kind of in that storing stage right now. I'm filling the storehouse, I guess.
You may be doing that, but I suspect that the yeast is doing its work. I think there's a giving in Silas's life, not just a receiving. I'm connecting it to indirect communication. Culture, shared worldview, a shared set of beliefs, whether we've identified them or not. We share this understanding of the world and of the assumptions that we hold. And culture is not changed through persistent direct communication. You can't just bash it into being. It's indirect communication that says, let me show you a way. Let me show you Americans who are highly individualistic. Let me show you community. Pick your thing. It sounds like you're already doing that, which is really fun to hear. You're seeing yourself as a receiver, as a getter right now, but I suspect that your intentionality, for you to answer this question, culture tells me you are in the process of both. There's a reciprocal process happening where you are receiving and gleaning, but then also influencing. It's fun to hear.
Well, and to refresh your memory, the question is, what are you building?
Okay.
What are you making? Culture. Whoa.
So I have this section of communication that has been uncomfortable, but there's one young man who will come to me after class and sit in my office chair and ply me with sincere curiosity about that day's material. And so it's that's a giving, young man. I mean, that is a giving. It's just so encouraging, and it's just a total pleasure. And you don't even know you're doing anything, but you're the one that's encouraging me in that class. Who knew, right?
Remember when I forgot what I was going to say?
Mm-hmm.
Now's the time I remembered it. In real time, our most recent episode that we released of this podcast, I wasn't in the room. I didn't participate in that episode. Did you hear it, Silas? So Maida and Colin spoke with Nora Kratz in June, right? And it just came out. Right now it's November-ish. And this is that feeling, like it's like Aaron reading the missionary newsletters, and it's even better than if you got a shot at saying what you want to say.
Yep.
Hearing that episode, I'd never heard it before it was aired, and I listened to this thing and I thought, these people are brilliant. Look at them go. And listen to that idea. Look at them go. And I'm having that experience too, just right now, thinking, Silas, this is it. You're doing great. You're doing great. So, yeah, it serves us older. I don't know what to call us. And I think that's important for younger people to know. I had a student come up to me her sophomore year. She'll probably know who she is when I say this. She has just this direct way of saying things. She said, "Mr. Jaspersen, you're just a guy." Yeah, I knew that. I guess you didn't. But, yeah, it's true. We're just further along. We just were born earlier.
Yep.
It's good for us to be here, but we're not building tents. This does have to end at some point. But it doesn't have to end right now, right? This is just like 2-minute warning. Drill. That's a football analogy. So now it's not literal. But like last call. If anybody has thoughts right now that you want to tack onto this, now's the time. That is delightful. There's so much silence.
I have something.
I believe you.
So it's a little funny. In preparation for this episode, I read a paper by Mark Paustian about overhearing. And we
got another 40 minutes now.
Huh?
We got another 40 minutes. Let's go.
It's okay that we haven't talked about it until now. But I was reading some highlights to my parents. I was home 2 weekends ago. I think 2 weekends ago. And I was describing overhearing, specifically the idea that when you are overheard, that's when you're at your most credible. That, and this is all from you, Professor Paustian, but that because you're not directly speaking to someone, they have no reason to doubt what you're saying, which makes that overheard thing immensely impactful, for better or for worse. And when I was describing this to my parents, my mom brought up that social media is essentially overhearing without context and without a relationship. So I guess my question is, or just thought to probe, hopefully, what role do you see context and a relationship play in, like, expression? I mean, we've just talked about what we're working on, whether that's, something physical, not physical, idea, concept. How do relationship and context impact what you express? That's my question.
I think it's everything. I think it forms the lens with which you interpret that information, and I think it also sets the stage for whether or not you're going to share, whether you feel comfortable in the situation or with the relationship. I don't think I would quite agree with the idea that social media is overhearing, because I think it's also performance, right? So there's a scripting and a curation that goes into the content that travels in that mediated way.
Is that context that's missing?
Well, the way I understand what you're saying about the credibility of overhearing is that there's almost a voyeuristic aspect to overhearing. Like, the person doesn't know, they're not performing the information, right? So you're sort of like, it feels like it's incredibly authentic and honest because it's not scripted, or it's not made for consumption. Credible. Like reading somebody's diary, like that wasn't made for public consumption. So you trust it more. That's how I read that credibility take.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not the best one to explain this, so.
I mean, you made me think of, there's something called collapsed context, which is like being in the airport and you hear someone on their cell phone talking to somebody. So collapsed context means that communication has, gone out beyond its bounds, and now there's something deeply unhealthy about collapsed context. That's not quite what you asked about. I do agree with Jason that context is everything. For communication to occur, we have to be in each other's heads in a certain way. There has to be a whole lot of shared human stuff, a whole lot of shared understandings for us to be communicating meaningfully. And I don't know if this gets at where your question came from, but I think context is everything. Love in a shared context is what makes communication possible. 100%.
You know, I want to throw a grenade into this. I've just been wondering if communication is possible, like a pure communication, if that can actually happen. It's really something for me to think about, say, the conventions of language and how a word is really a substitute. A word is a generalization that we can agree upon. And then the combination of words, is a combination of generalizations that compound and get, even more possible sort of wrong interpretations. And as an artist, the goal is to try to produce something that bridges between the inside of me and the inside of you. And vision exceeds execution. It never quite suffices. And you find out that, like, when you're really paying attention to your experience in life, the phenomenon of being you, there's nothing that suffices to share that. To get that out of you into somebody else, or to get somebody else's full existence into you. There's a brand of communication scholar that just wrings their hands over that question of, are we just finally alone in our skulls? And what actual human contact is even possible? And I think that the Christian view is more optimistic than that, in a way that we know it's a human to communicate. Adam and Eve did not have mental fusion. They had to reach for each other across the space between them in the medium of words. And it's human to communicate means that in heaven, apparently, we'll be communicating. Just from all the depictions of Revelation, they're communicating there as well, reaching for each other across the space through the medium of words. Now, sin, of course, has laid a heavy burden on this process, but I think, unlike giving in to all the pessimism, I think that the space between you and I is the room we leave for compassion and for the struggles I cannot know, and it preserves the mystery of another human being. And it's not an entirely, like I can say, wringing my hands over this issue. I actually kind of think I know everything you're saying about words, and I'm familiar with that. I have to reflect more on it. I just think that words work pretty well much of the time. I don't know. Well, and just to clarify, this is not really about me judging whether or not there's value. It's just like observing the phenomenon. I'm just looking at it, thinking, should we believe that it's accurate?
Is accuracy the goal?
So there's a perfect example. I chose my word inappropriately, right? I don't think I mean accuracy, right? But that's what came out of my mouth.
I didn't mean to jump on you. I would the line of thinking was that communication is happening effectively, but maybe not if what you're measuring is the efficacy of what you tried to communicate. So a composer will usually allow the piece of music to do what it does. They will resist the temptation to say, and now students, I want to tell you what this ought to elicit. I think we've talked about Sally Lloyd-Jones and talking about the role of story. She says the proper way to kill a story is by explaining the story, because the story was already doing the communicating. So maybe that's where my mind was going. I didn't mean to jump on the accuracy word, but I think that a powerful story is going to communicate what it communicates. We just don't get to control the interpretation.
So I'm sorry, it just parting company with that grossly pessimistic point of view about communication, that they can only think of communication in terms of its breakdowns. They can only think of it in terms of the problem. And I just think we could have a little more gratitude than that for the ability to know and be known by each other, but not without mystery.
So this is another great example in real time that I didn't realize I was joining a camp.
Oh,
To me it was a genuine sort of frontier, and I think I tend towards optimism. I tend towards maybe the courage, with our limited tools. Great things have been done and are possible. A great amount of communication is possible. But maybe in the same way that when we look under a microscope, we see more nothing than something. There are constantly gaps in this system in which we've done great things and are capable of building, let's say, rope bridges between between individuals, or rope swings or something.
Just to
tenuous.
be clear, I was not at all meaning to cast you. I'm reacting to a kind of scholarship that I've had to spend some time with, and it's just, you just want to, I don't know, purge it from your mind. It's just so, well, I've already made my point, but I love the question you're asking. It's bottomless.
We recently had a scholar on campus talking about the Shroud of Turin. And that's a rabbit hole that I don't intend to go down. But I attended a lunch with him the next day, and I was at supper with him before his talk, and so I got to know Dr. John Bombaro a little bit. And there were some challenges to his take, because he was really very insistent on that the Shroud of Turin is legitimate. He had a stance that was overwhelmed by the evidence, and when people kind of challenged him on that, like, why does it matter? Is that important at all? Part of his response was, imagine it's the year 40. How many Gospels are written? None. Zero are written in what we would recognize as they're not. The Gospel exists. The Gospel is in the world. The Word was made flesh, dwelled among us, and God's good news, his mission, was here in the year 40, right? So it's interesting for me, that prompt that got me thinking, when we say we are a people of the Word, what are we picturing? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh, that logos at the very beginning. I think it's pretty easy for us post-Gutenberg, to picture print, to picture paper. Bound Bibles, right? But what is that what we mean when we talk about the Word of God? Is it print on page? This is a can of worms, I mean, we reference Scripture and the canon, but the question about 40 AD got me thinking. To find the Word.
I was thinking of it in terms of indirect communication, that they got to see and feel, and smell the Word made flesh.
With body odor.
Like allowing capability to understand is not the right word, but almost that. Is that kind of what you're...
To know more fully.
So there was a tactile encounter, an incarnate encounter with the Word. The Word was made flesh, and this ties into the Shroud of Turin. That there's this. His stance is that if this is real, right? This is like a tactile testimony. It's a print of the Word made flesh. Yeah, right. Like I said, we got another 40 minutes.
It just triggers a childhood memory of my parents talking about the Shroud of Turin. And Mom said, "Honey, I don't need that for my faith." And Dad said, "But what if that's the face of my Lord?" And that made an impression. This is not to your question at all, but holy cow, did that make an impression?
No, that is related.
Okay.
That is related. Because the incarnation, I think, needs our attention. That was a choice. God chose to be made flesh and dwell among us and to have a face and a body.
Jesus is the ultimate indirect communication because he's more than he appears. And every word out of his mouth would cause you to say, what do we make of this one? So that's the inwardness piece, the stirring up of what do we make of this one? And
there's more than the words.
Absolutely.
It's been an important distinction for me to make that we use the word gospel so frequently. What is the gospel? People will say rightly, well, it's good news. Yes, but keep going. And usually it'll be some sort of definition of the implications of this. We've received salvation through the death and resurrection of Jesus. But the gospel, the distinction is that the gospel is Jesus. The gospel is Jesus. Full stop. Now, there are all sorts of implications of this good news. But it becomes a limiting factor when you try to squeeze it down into a definition. If you require direct communication instead of allowing for indirect communication to move in mysterious ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard some Christian presentation on beauty recently cite Emily Dickinson. She said, "Tell the truth, but tell it slant."
But tell it what?
Slant.
Okay.
And that's kind of the parable thought, or let's say the Song of Songs is really about Jesus. That's what Mark is saying about Scripture. I think that there's an indirectness to it that is the truth, but there's a prism on it. There's something that it suggests, it implies, and kind of. Another word I learned from you is maieutic. Mm-hmm. Leaves something for you to do. Mm-hmm. It leaves something for you. Doesn't just finish everything. It suggests. And then you participate in a way. You own it in a way because you you complete the punchline inside you in different ways. It's just so smart.
I was just thinking about the daunting task of writing this bookmark. So best of luck to you.
There's no deadline, so that helps.
All right. I'm suggesting that this is coming to an end.
fine.
What a pleasure. It's been just a total pleasure. Thanks for
Jason,
having us.
You talked yesterday about a cultivation of a garden rather than the operating of a machine, right? And what you do in these conversations is cultivate a garden. It produces fruit. Sometimes multiplies fruit, but you are doing the work of saying, we're just gonna plant and tend, and we're just gonna see what comes up. So it's a fun process to be a part of. Thanks for cultivating.
Well, you're all my fruits. Something like that.
I don't know. Fruit of your loom.
No, that is not like that. No. Okay.
That was a little treat for the listener who made it this far.
Well, if you're out there, you listener that has made it this far, you feast reader, congratulations. And this has been Whistle the Feast.
And that wraps up this episode of Whistle the Feast. We hope you enjoyed the journey as much as we did. Whistle the Feast would not be possible without all the creative people and spaces at Bethany Lutheran College and beyond. If you're curious about the school or the podcast, feel free to go to blc.edu for more information. If you have thoughts, questions, or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. You can send any feedback about the show to feastreaders@gmail.com. or schedule a visit to check out the behind the scenes of what we do. A massive thanks goes to the wonderful people in our Bethany community for sharing their thoughts with us, and our puppet master, Jaksyn Graham, for managing the edits. My name is Silas Gawrisch alongside Jason Jaspersen, and we want to thank you readers for tuning in to this episode of Whistle the Feast. Until next time.
Get curious, be of good service, and discover what God has given you.